judge there in California that was overseeing his tax case issued a very lengthy, opinion about this, where he basically said that, a press release is not a pardon, and, that, Joe Biden can't just rewrite history. So he took a little bit of stiff aim.
Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle. I'm joined today by Supreme Court reporter Kaelan Deese. Kaelan, we've had the big Hunter Biden pardon, which many of us anticipated, but not everybody. Talk a little bit about the legalities of this decision.
Yeah, so pretty much President Joe Biden has, at will made Hunter Biden his pardon a rather lengthy one, dating almost 11 years. So we're seeing basically, the scope of presidential pardon powers at play here. A lot of people have, made comparisons to is this more Nixonian, but the legal experts that I've been speaking to say that this is even broader than the pardon that Nixon received. But again, this, goes to show sort of the almost monarchical aspects of the pardon abilities of a president.
Sure.
Is that, this is a very wide scope pardon. Not only does it cover the, tax and the gun charges that Hunter Biden was
actually convicted of.
Yeah, exactly. But now we're seeing, any crimes perhaps that might have taken place, any actions, basically gets swept away for the younger Biden here. So it is, it's not a very popular decision, but then again, there are also people even on the right who are saying, well, if he was my son, if it was my son, I'd probably maybe do the same thing. So it's a really mixed bag of reactions that we've seen this past week, and no one can really center, on one specific, reaction to go with. So it's been quite, around,
So there's been a lot of talk about what kind of precedents it set. So there are some who are discussing whether Biden will issue preemptive pardons of people who haven't even been charged of any crimes. And there's also talk about what this might mean when President Trump is back in the White House and what types of pardons and clemency he might pursue.
Yeah, that's been sort of the talk right now. Right now we've seen at least some reactions that we can sort of go along with when it comes to how this pardon is being perceived. For one, the judge there in California that was overseeing his tax case issued a very lengthy, opinion about this, where he basically said that, a press release is not a pardon, and, that, Joe Biden can't just rewrite history. So he took a little bit of stiff aim at what the language and, basically the president, he said he can't rewrite history. That was a very big line, I would say, from that decision. But overall, I think that this is definitely something that Trump needs to be looking into as far as what Biden might be considering for other pardons. And, I think that, whether he's going to look into Jack Smith, that's something that the House is definitely looking into as far as Jim Jordan's operation right now. So I think that that is something to look into, is who are the figures that Trump might have singled out throughout this campaign that he said or signaled that he's going to look into. Who are those people that, President Joe Biden might think need a little more cover or defense? That's something to look into for sure.
Talk a little bit about this big transgender Supreme Court case that we've had arguments for this week.
Yeah, so this is billed pretty much as the Supreme Court's sort of Roe versus Wade overturning Dobbs equivalent of the 2024 term. It happened on December 4th, and I think that we're going to see the justices really take their time in crafting their decision, albeit it seemed like from the tea leaves that we could see sort of the justices leaning toward upholding Tennessee's law, which is a law that not only bans minors from undergoing hormonal therapies, but also surgeries. Now, surgeries weren't the question at issue here, because that's not what the parents and the their children were sort of seeking in this case. But if Tennessee's law is upheld, then that could see other laws in about 24 other states, also signaling a likelihood that those would be upheld as well. So I think that that is sort of a good sign for advocates out there who think that there's a need to sort of pump the brakes on this. Now, the justices, they were the conservative ones particularly, were very compelled by some of the research abroad in Europe. That was a major discussion throughout the oral arguments, that this research that other European countries have been doing, where they're seeing that perhaps this isn't something that's going to necessarily be a one-size-fits-all solution for those experiencing gender dysphoria, has given justices like Kavanaugh pause to say, well, the research is still very inconclusive at this time. I think that one of the other things that I actually spoke to Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti yesterday about that he said stood out to him was the fact that the ACLU attorneys couldn't necessarily push back against the fact that all the data that we have out there, there's not one study that points to an actual association with the suicide rate among transgender youth. So basically what that is saying is we cannot point to a correlation there with transgender minors that might actually go through with a completed suicide, essentially is the language that was being put out there. So I think that the fact that the research shows that there's not a whole lot of like doctors are telling parents and their kids that the risk of suicide is there if they don't go through these transitions. But if that's actually not the case, if the data doesn't point to that, then that's another issue. But the bottom line is this is a 14th Amendment issue, and I think that the justices were also wary of saying that this is an Equal Protection Clause violation. So I think that that's the actual legal argument at play here, but I do think that the scientific data that's going into this very unique court case is also going to play a factor in their decision.
Thank you, Kaelan. You can read Kaelan and the rest of our investigations team's coverage at washingtonexaminer.com.